Hi, I'm Scott. I'm a Quiet Place fan.
Hi, I'm Senthil, and I'm a Bird Box fan.
So the two of us have decided, since we disagree, we're going to start watching as many horror movies as we can and come up with a new way of rate them. Come join us. Hey, Cynthia, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Hey, you picked a winner. Talk to us about what we're going to be talking about today.
I'm a big fan of Paranormal Activity, the original that came out in 2007. It's one of the original, very highly successful super micro budget movies. And I'd love to talk about it. When did you see it? What was your first reaction to it, Scott?
So I remember going to the theaters to see Paranormal Activity. It was, to me, it's one of those ones that, we talked about this in our last episode when we were talking about Halloween. It started a genre. Blair Witch Project was, I think, the one that really started this off, which was the found footage, three people walking around in the woods with cameras. Paranormal Activity took that to inside the house using the cameras that you use to protect your home. I think the beauty, and you and I have talked about this, Cynthia. When I was younger, I was big into the gore, and the gorier the better.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older, I like a movie that builds tension. I like a movie that kind of hints that there is gore taking place someplace. That the Lodge, Antlers, the Midsummer. It's this slow, dreadful buildup, knowing that something horrible is going to happen. To me, that's Paranormal Activity in a nutshell.
I think that's very well put. This is not a CGI driven blood and guts type of horror movie. It's very subtle. The fear factor is very subtle. It's built up over time. It kind of reminds me of another movie we talked about, Mungo Lake, which is frightening without using heavy on effects and blood and guts and gore.
Yeah. So what I love about Paranormal Activity is the idea that something is inside your house and it's there. And what's funny is before we started the show, we were talking about Poltergeist, right? And we were talking about how Poltergeist, when it was made, how awesome it was. But it was leading you to, oh my God, we're built on top of a graveyard, blah, 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 right? So you're kind of expecting these things. In Paranormal Activity, it is the idea that you could be living in a home that you trust, a place that you feel safe, and your camera captures the cover moving a little bit, right? Yeah. And to me, that terrifies me, Cynthia, because it is when I am asleep, you are no more vulnerable than when you are sleeping. And much of this takes place while they're asleep.
Yeah, absolutely true. I kind of wonder though, when we talked about Halloween, what our original perception was versus on a rewatch. And now, as you did the rewatch, did any of your original thoughts about Paranormal Activity change, or do you still feel the same way?
So here's what's funny. When we were talking about Halloween in our last episode, I said that movie would probably just end up on Amazon Prime, right? There's something different about Paranormal Activity that I think it would have gone to theaters. And I will say the reason why is because they do such a great job of slowly building tension in your safe space.
Yeah.
That you're drawn to it, right? That you are drawn to it. Now, when I watched Paranormal Activity again, I liked it as much as I liked it the first time.
Yeah, I will say I liked it even more when I watched it recently, for the reasons that the fear levels and how well they built that fear gradually is still there. It's still there. It's still disturbing.
Yes.
And one of the things that stood out uniquely to me about this is this came across more of where the performances didn't seem like they were acting. So It really felt like they were in their homes going about their day-to-day business. They weren't delivering dialogue as if they were in a movie, and there just happens to be a camera that's recording their activity.
Yes.
So I felt like it was a real neighborhood in a real home where these really creepy things are happening at night that scares the daylights out of you. I did not see this in the theaters originally because originally I did not used to be a fan of found footage concept because the shaky cam is visually difficult for me.
Yeah.
And however, these days, shaky hands not an issue. Stabilization is available to even amateur filmmakers. So I didn't see it originally in the theaters. I saw it afterwards on cable, but I enjoyed it more because I thought now the fear factor is still there. I thought what they did with the budget is amazing. It was really effective. The ending, just the last 12 minutes, it hits you really, really hard after they build the tension very slowly.
Yes.
And there is no real resolution to the movie either. So that was also effective for me.
So I actually, to this day, I do not like the ending of Paranormal Activity. I
What is
think,
that?
well, I'll tell you why. I think, and for those of you that have seen this movie, I'm going to ask you to just skip past this because I don't want, if you haven't seen it, I don't want you to look at it, go, oh my God, he gave it away. Look, when she gets sucked away and then he gets her coming back into the camera with the demon face didn't work for me. The terror for me wasn't that she was possessed by a demon right at the end where she crab crawls, kind of like their little thing there.
Yeah.
It was the violence that takes place inside the house, even off camera.
Yeah.
And if they had ended it there, to me, that would have been brilliant. It's the idea that, oh, now it's possessed her. I didn't really care. What I cared about was that there was something, the whole idea that you lay flour down on your floor and you have these weird footprints, there. Where Paranormal Activity and these movies continue, like the Conjuring universe continue to get me is, why the fuck are you staying in the house? That you see it on the videotape, suddenly there's weird prints on your floor, and yet you continue to stay in the house. And that's where some of these lose me.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that didn't work for me when I watched this. It was more apparent now than the first time I saw it. There's some requirement for the actors to do stupid things, the characters to do stupid things.
Yeah.
It is clear that the female lead says several times, we need to get out of here. We need to get out of here. We need to get out of here. It's the male characters like, what more do you need, man, to be able to understand there's something? And there's some of it is, oh, nothing can hurt me. I'm going to be able to tackle this on. Then, there's a point where she's like, no, let's stay overnight. Even after he says, let's go. I'm sorry, but I'd be gone. At that point, it's like, honey, great. You can live here, stay here.
Yeah.
I'm going to take off.
But what I will say is that when I was growing up in the South, we lived in a haunted house. And it's hard for me to talk about it because I don't really believe in ghosts, but holy crap, did we have some horrible things that happened in that house. And even my parents will admit that they had things that happened in that house. And I said, well, why did you stay? Why did we stay? And their thing was, well, where would we go?
Gosh, that's a fantastic perspective. There's the other half of that concept. It's easy to say, get the heck out, but it's your house, you're paying a mortgage, you're paying rent. Where are you going to go? In a hotel overnight? Then what?
Right. And what my parents even admit to is, so I was in this back bedroom where there was so much of this activity that took place, right? And both of my parents kind of said, yeah, we put you back there with now what we know is to be, probably it was not a very nice house, right? And they tore that house down. That house is gone out of there. Nobody was able to live in that house and they just tore it down. But the whole idea of why you don't leave is just that. Where would we go? My parents were like, where would we go? We'd have to go buy a new home and then we'd have to move everything. And so we just stayed, even though they saw weird things. So that gives me some grace with movies like this. What I'll come back to, something, what I just love about films like this though, is I don't need a lot. It's that dread buildup, right? That you're watching the camera and you're watching the clock tick down and suddenly the cover moves off of her foot or her foot jerks because it grabs her foot, right? That shit's scary.
It's definitely, we've talked about this multiple times. As we've gotten older, I think both of us could say that the gore fest is not as interesting anymore. The psychological scare is much more effective. And that's why I think this movie held up for me really well. I agree, but as far as the people leaving, what would be interesting is if in this movie, it's the guy basically saying, I think we can deal with this. Maybe then future movies can take the perspective of being realistic. Yes, there's weird things going on, but honey, we can't go because we can't afford to get out of here. So
right. And that's the thing is, it's when you don't address the reason why. And I thought that's why The Conjuring 2 did a great, I love The Conjuring 2. But The Conjuring 2 with that family was, we've got no place to go. We can't leave here. Yes, we know it's haunted. So they run over to their neighbors where they stay, right? But they end up back in that same house because the neighbors are like, get the F out of my house. So, I mean, it's this whole, but if you addressed it like that, hey, we can't go anyplace else. I still come back to, though, Paranormal Activity is one of those movies that will last. It's one of those ones that people will continue to go back to. It's a genre buster. It created this whole idea that for $35,000, you can build dread, you can build fear, you can actually make a horror movie.
And they use audio very highly. It's very effective in the movie.
Yes.
I think it does hold up really well. I would definitely strongly recommend it if somebody asked me. I think it holds up just as well in 2021 as it did in 2007 when it first came out. I did read that after Paramount licensed it and picked it up, that they reshot the ending. So I don't know. I haven't done the research, and maybe we can talk about it in a future episode, what that reshot of the ending was and what the original ending was. Maybe the demon face wasn't part of his original.
I will put money down that it wasn't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think I would have been just as happy with before that happened.
It wasn't needed. It wasn't
right.
Needed.
In Blair Witch Project, you never know what happens to the two kids.
Yeah.
Right. One standing in the corner, the other one gets knocked out. That's it. The ending. Now, how many times, and maybe you haven't, Simple, but to me, I went back looking for clues as to what happened to them. If there was a shadow or anything, I slowed the point down to when she's yelling out his name and you see him in the corner and then she gets knocked out. I watched that over and over and over again, trying to find what happens. Is there a shadow of somebody on the wall? Do you get a hint of who it is? Nothing. It just ends. And to me, that makes a great horror film. It leaves me going, what the hell just happened?
What you don't know is much more frightening than what you do know.
Yes.
The absence, I think, is much more effective. I'd love to talk about Blair Witch in a future conversation. It was budget. It definitely fits in our criteria. It's listed as a 200 to 500K budget. I really thought it was much smaller than that. And I originally was not a fan of Blair Witch Project, so it's
still one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And I would love to get this actually as something to talk about. And there was a reason for that. And I will tell you, it was because of the press and social media. And I don't want to go into depth with that right now. But what I'm saying is they built up a phenomenal social media campaign. And when I went to go see it with my uncle and aunt, before it got released that this wasn't true, when I saw it, it was still, people believed this was real. So they had built up this whole social thing and that this was real found footage. So for me, that made Blair Witch Project for me exciting. Now, when I found out it wasn't, it lost some of its luster, but I will tell you today, I can still watch Blair Witch Project and I feel the same dread to the build up to the end that I did the first time I saw it. And it actually changed the way that I go camping. It really did, because I used to love to go camping and hiking, and I went, I don't know if I enjoy this as much anymore because of this movie. We can go into that later. For me, Paranormal Activity is the same thing. It's that fear of my own house. Yeah. I loved it. Simple. I thought it was a great pick.
My closing thoughts on it would be that I think what I enjoyed about talking about Paranormal Activity and Halloween in the previous episode is that we've talked about this multiple times, that horror is unique in that you don't need to spend a lot of money to make it effective. And these are examples of writers and directors who spent micro budget levels that blew up hugely popular, established a career, established franchises that still persist today. And I look forward to some of the directors, that really talented directors that we have seen in this budget range, and see what they can do in the future.
I agree. I agree, Synthil. Hey, another fantastic conversation on movies. I love every one of them. I will talk to you next time.
See you next time.